Welcome learners. In the previous sessions, I had discussed the structure and dynamics of tribal economy in India, the characteristics of tribal economic systems in India. I had also explained the economic classification of tribes in India, the types of occupations followed by different tribes in the country, and the dynamic forces and process of economic change in tribal India. Today, I will start with the unit Gender Stratification in Tribal Society. I will discuss the meaning of gender and stratification. I will also explain the concept of gender and stratification in the context of tribal societies. Gender and class stratification are among the most basic divisions of human society. Tribal society too has such divisions, which may not be similar to those in the non-tribal larger communities. Let us understand the meaning of gender. Gender is the social dimension of being male or female. Gender identity is the sense of being male or female, which most children acquire by the age of 3. Gender is not being masculine or feminine. According to the Children's Health Encyclopedia, gender identity is a person's sense of identification with either the male or female sex, as manifested in appearance, behavior, and other aspects of a person's life. The World Economic Forum explains that gender is not synonymous with women as it is commonly understood. It refers to both men and women and to their status relative to each other. Definition given by Hesse-Bieber and Karger says that gender is determined socially. It is the societal meaning assigned to male and female. Each society emphasizes particular roles that each sex should play, although there is wide latitude in acceptable behaviors for each gender. One definition given by World Health Organization explains gender, which is used to describe those characteristics of women and men which are socially constructed, while sex refers to those which are biologically determined. People are born female or male but learn to be girls and boys who grow into women and men. This learned behavior makes up gender identity and determines gender roles. A definition given by Borgata and Montgomery says gender is the division of people into two categories, men and women. Through interaction with caretakers, socialization in childhood, peer pressure in adolescence, and gendered work and family roles, women or men are socially constructed to be different in behavior, attitudes, and emotions. The gendered social order is based on and maintains these differences. One definition by IFID explains gender as gender relations refer to a complex system of personal and social relations of domination and power through which women and men are socially created and maintained, and through which they gain access to power and material resources or are allocated status within society. Let us understand the concept of negotiating honor. Chakravarti and Dubey have examined women's collective honor or dignity, a notion that can be measured by the degree of respect shown by others to the women folk. In Hinduism, women are considered as guardians of family honor through their virtue and modesty. The failure to maintain these traits can bring dishonor to the family and sully the purity of their caste. However, the mainstream sociological studies on caste, class, and gender provide no discussion of the fluidity of this concept for disaster situations. The question to be posed and answered is, how do women negotiate with honor or lajja when they experience environmental disasters and consequential displacement? Evidence also suggests that women are not passive recipients of caste, class, and gender, but rather conscious acting subjects of social relationships and processes characterized by the institution of caste, which signifies women as both perpetrators of caste and the agents of exerting challenges to the same. They do not operate so much through individuals as through units based on kinship or the larger kinship, that is, a village as a unit. As a result, there has been considerable relaxation of the rules and norms governing commensality, that is, consuming a meal together, and to some extent exogamous marriages, that is, marriage outside a specific tribe. However, the consequences of this has often been harmful to women. There is substantial presence of tribal women in the Indian workforce. According to 1991 census, about 28.2% of tribal women returned as main workers, clearly indicating the female work as essential to the maintenance of the household. The participation rate is higher in rural areas than in urban areas. Around 13.1% of these women are classified as marginal workers. These women are mainly engaged in seasonal, agricultural, and plantation work. The industrial classification of tribal female workers shows more than 90% of these workers are engaged in primary sector almost equally as cultivators or agricultural laborers. Large-scale ecological destruction due to industrialization in tribal areas of Bihar and Orissa has forced tribal men to migrate to towns or other areas in search of employment opportunities. Large-scale migrations of men and women to industrial areas and tea plantations have tormented their culture and economic base. Inequalities among the genders which existed in the traditional culture get more consolidated in such situations. This is because the new capitalist order, of which tribals become part, brings with itself androcentric values, that is, values which are centered on men, and privileges men. The patriarchal male ideologies of the employers get translated in terms of giving lower wages to women and more harder and monotonous work rules. Industrial and agricultural labor, though promises jobs to tribal women, also exposes them to a worse kind of exploitation, both in material and sexual terms. Outside contacts have also led to the habits of alcoholism and gambling among men, which adversely affects the household economy and leads to wife beating and abandonment of women. Besides working hard as laborers, women are also found to engage in marginal farming, animal husbandry, firewood collection, gathering of food products, as none of these activities are of permanent nature. Household chores and childcare is also predominantly a woman's work. Division of labor on gender lines remains grossly unequal in most tribal communities. Let us understand the concept of stratification. Social inequality is a universal phenomena in all societies. It can exist either in the form of a hierarchy of groups or individuals, or it may exist without the creation of a hierarchy. In the former case, it is called social hierarchy, while in the latter case, it is known as social differentiation. For in almost all societies, men and women are treated unequally. If social inequality manifests itself in the form of a hierarchy involving ranking of groups, then it is known as social stratification. Thus, social stratification is a particular case of the social inequality. Social stratification is essentially a group phenomena. According to Ogburn and Nimkoff, the process by which individuals and groups are ranked in a more or less enduring hierarchy of status is known as stratification. Melvin Tumin defines social stratification as an arrangement of any social group or society into a hierarchy of positions that are unequal with regard to power, property, social evaluation, and psychic gratification. According to Lundberg, a stratified society is one marked by inequality by differences among people that are evaluated by them as being lower and higher. According to Kinsley, Davis, and Moore, stratification exists in every known human society. All social systems share certain functional prerequisites which must be met if the system is to survive and operate efficiently. One such prerequisite is role allocation and performance. This means that all roles must be filled. They will be filled by those best able to perform them. The necessary training for them is undertaken, and that the roles are performed conscientiously. According to Karl Marx, in all stratified societies, there are two major social groups, a ruling class and a subject class. The ruling class derives its power from its ownership and control of the forces of production. The ruling class exploits and oppresses the subject class. As a result, there is a basic conflict of interest between the two classes. The various institutions of society, such as the legal and political system, are instruments of ruling class domination and serve to further its interests. In order to understand gender stratification in tribal society, it is first necessary to understand tribal customary laws and women. In tribal societies, women's lives are governed by their personal laws and customs. Most of the tribal customary laws, which include people's beliefs, customs, social mores, and rights since time immemorial, are not always conducive to the interests of women. Indeed, but for a few exceptions, most of the customary or personal laws, particularly those relating to property and marriage, are highly oppressive to women. The system of inheritance among most tribes is invariably in favor of men. In general, women are entitled only to maintenance rights and expenses for marriage, while men inherit land and all other movable and immovable properties. Even in societies that follow the matrilineal principle of descent and inheritance, which is based on kinship with the mother on the female line, the woman is the focal point of the household organization. When it comes to the allocation of rights over land, a sharp distinction is maintained between ownership and control. While ownership of land is transmitted through women, control invariably lies with men. This is true among practically all the matrilineal groups in northeast India, such as the Khasi, Jaintia, Garo, Lalung, and Koch. Similarly, in patrilineal system, that is a system based on tracing descent through the male line, where women have access to land, they most enjoy usufructory rights only, that is a legal right which is accorded to a person or party that confers the temporary right to use and derive income or benefit from someone else's property. Proprietary and managerial rights to land are contingent on a variety of factors, such as subject to their remaining unmarried, having no brother, widowed, or marry a prescribed kin. Several women among the Ho and Santhal tribes choose to remain unmarried in order to retain their rights to land. In an agrarian society, land constitutes the most vital productive resource. However, women's access to it is constrained by a number of social and cultural factors. In many tribal societies, social taboos prevent women from inheriting land. For example, among the Ho and the Oraon tribes, women's access to land is constricted by the taboo which forbids them to use the plough, a practice which is rooted in the belief that if a woman used the plough, it would result in economic and social calamities. Such taboos not only help men to deny women their rights to land by restricting them access to the tools of production, it also ensures that women cannot engage in extensive farming on their own without the help of men. This kind of taboo is prevalent among many tribes in the central and southern belts of the country. The practice not only reinforces women's dependence upon men, it also explains why women are generally confined to the less remunerative mode of production or in manual operations only. Where women have access to land, other retrograde practices are also used to dispossess them of their holdings. Among several tribes in Bihar, witch hunting is frequently resorted to as means of pressuring women who refuse to part with their land when demanded by the more influential king, as persons convicted of witchcraft are divested of all their rights and are either exiled from the village or put to death. The practice apparently serves a viable means to discourage widows and daughters from staking their claim to land. Women also face many constraints in their access to community land. Although in many tribal societies, large tracts of land are set aside for common use by members of the community, access to them is marked by sharp inequality among class and gender lines. As land is normally allotted to the household, it is usually men who benefit from it because, as household heads, they exercise control over their wife and children. In certain instances, the customary land use pattern itself is detrimental to the interest of women. For example, among the Khasis, while in ideal terms members have only occupancy rights to community land, which is restricted to the period use only on the principle that if the land is left fallow for 3 consecutive years, it reverts back to the community in practice. However, if a person makes permanent improvement on the land and occupies it for a sufficiently long period of time by allowing permanent improvements on community land to accrue, occupancy rights slowly get transformed into ownership rights. A significant outcome of this process is that persons with better resources could, through the application of labor and capital, establish durable assets on community land and claim the same as their personal possession. For obvious reasons, this process tilts in favor of the rich or women who have male support to assist them in their tasks. Tribal women also rarely have an effective role in management of community resources, as the management of the community resources is entrusted to the village council. Women's marginal position in public affairs adversely affects their involvement in these matters. Even today, when women's empowerment through the reservation of seats in the Panchayati Raj institutions has become a reality for most women in the rest of the country, in many tribal societies, women have yet to gain access to this constitutional provision because their areas have been kept out of the application of the Panchayat Raj. In matters of marriage and divorce, also, the tribal customary laws are far from favorable to women, despite the popular perception that tribal women have a greater control over their sexuality. Several repressive customs such as child marriage, forced marriage, and polygyny are widely practiced in many communities. For instance, among several tribes in Arunachal Pradesh, women are treated as mere commodities, which men could easily procure through financial settlement in the form of bride price. Indeed, the system of bride price has proved to be the bane of women and lies at the root of the proliferation of polygynous unions, as wealthy men can take on a number of wives simply by paying an agreed sum to the girl's family. Let us now try to understand the position of women in tribal economy and political structures. There is a division of roles based on sex almost everywhere in the world in relation to the traditional economic structures. The hazardous tasks as well as those requiring physical strength have been ascribed to men, and works which needs sustained effort and endurance have been assigned to women. In India, the tribes are at different levels of economic development, and in each women have significant role. The main ones are food gathering and hunting, shifting cultivation, cultivation of land by ploughing, and regions where the tribals work in mining and other industries. In societies characterized by hunting and gathering, for example among the Birhor in Bihar, hunting is the job of men, while collection of fruits, edible roots, and tubers is the work of women. Women also cook the meals, look after the children, and manage the affairs of the household. Besides hunting and gathering economy, the Birhor have taken up the craft of rope making as means of subsistence in which women play a very important role. Among the agricultural tribes, for example the Munda, Urao, Santhal, and the Gond, women work shoulder to shoulder with men. The women exclusively look after the transplanting and harvesting, besides weeding, reaping, husking, and winnowing, while men do plowing, leveling, irrigation, and watching the crops. Besides this, women fetch water from the distant springs, collect firewood for fuel, clean the house, cook the meals, and look after children. In spite of this, tribal women suffer from certain disabilities. For instance, in agricultural economy, plowing the field and thatching the roof are absolutely taboo for them. Similarly, among the Toda of Nilgiris, who practice pastoral economy, it is taboo for women to enter the dairies since they are considered to be impure. In matrilineal societies, for example, among the Khasis, women are engaged in trade. They sell fish, stitch clothes in the market, and supply tea and snacks in the offices, etc. They also work in agricultural, both shifting and wet paddy cultivation, besides looking after the home and children. The traditional political field of the tribals is confined to the institutions like the Council of Elders, village headman, village panchayat, and the tribal chief, all of them males who take important decisions in all matters. Let us now discuss the status of women in the traditional social structure of India. Most of the tribes in India are patronymic, patrilineal, patriarchal, and patrilocal. Patronymic is the name relating to or derived from the name of a father or male ancestor. Patrilineal is based on relationship to the father or descent through the male line. Patriarchal is relating to or denoting a system of society or government controlled by men. Patrilocal is a society or custom in which a married couple settles with or near the husband's family. So, most of the tribes in India are patronymic, patrilineal, patriarchal, and patrilocal. The major ones are the Gond, Santhal, Bhil, Munda, and Orao. When the society is patrilineal, members trace their descent through male, normally to an original male ancestor. The property is inherited in the male line, and it is always a son who succeeds his father as the head of a clan or lineage. The authority is entirely vested on the hands of a male. In a patriarchal Kisan family, a tribe of Orissa, the daughter never get a share of their parents' property. This is true of almost all patrilineal societies, though there is difference of degree. In certain South Indian tribes like Irula, one of the major patriarchal tribes of Tamil Nadu, a daughter's right to the ancestral property of her father is recognized when there are no male lineal descendants or when she is a widow or a mother of a deceased. It is noticed, however, that tribal women are not totally debarred from owning any kind of property. Among most of the tribes, unmarried women have absolute right over their own earnings. However, they inherit movable property and the boys get all the immovable property. The Khasis, Garo, and Jaintia tribes of Meghalaya and Nayars of Kerala represent a matronymic, matrilineal, matriarchal, and matrilocal kind of social structure. Here, the descent is traced through the female line. Succession and inheritance also descends in the same direction, while the residence in most cases is matrilocal. Among the matrilineal societies, though the household property is inherited from mother to daughters, and she is the owner of the property, the management of property is always vested in the hands of the male. Among the Khasis, property is managed by the wife's brother. Among the Garos, by the husband and his father-in-law. Thus, matrilineal social structure, which by law goes in favor of tribal women, is not as favorable as it seems to be. In this session, I discussed the meaning of gender and stratification. We have seen how gender stratification takes place in tribal societies. Women's status in tribal society is low. Tribal society is patriarchal and women do not enjoy prominent position in the social and religious spheres. Thank you.